No. Let me open. We are discussing about the consumer behavior, right? And there, what we are discussing in the consumer behavior? Can you tell me, anyone?
Subsidy
What
in
we
cash,
are,
subsidy in kind.
right, from Madla and Miller. Okay. Subsidy in cash and subsidy in kind. Yes. So is it visible? My screen is visible to you?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay, okay, okay. Now, now is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Fine. So this is the diagram. If you have Madla Miller, I hope you have already checked it. That this type of diagram is there. So here, what we are saying that initially the budget line was AB, without any type of subsidy. Now the subsidy in cash is given to you, just like some amount of money is transferred from the government to your bank account. Okay, so it is as if your income has increased. So if your income is rising, then the budget line will shift parallelly upward, that we know. So now the new budget line is CD. When subsidy in cash is given to you, your new budget line will be CD. Now look, given this CD budget line, say your consumption point or you are at A. You are at A initially. Initially, you are at A. Now, given that A, if that amount of cash is given to you, so with that amount of money, you can purchase AE amount of X. Do you agree with it? You can purchase AE amount of X with that cash, the subsidy cash. Can you understand it? That BD or AE, whatever it is. So with that extra amount of money as subsidy which you are receiving, with that money you can purchase BD amount of X. Do you agree with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So that BD is equal to AE because these are parallel, right? So I can say AE amount of X I can consume with subsidy in cash. Okay. Now government is saying that, okay, I'm not going to give you cash. I'm going to give you subsidy in kind. And the equivalent amount of subsidy I am giving. This is how. So now the government is saying you can have AE amount of X free. Okay. You are getting AE free. Okay. So AE amount of commodity, that is amount of X, is given by the government to the consumer as subsidy. This is free. This is free of cost. Is it okay? Is it okay? That BD amount of X is given by the government to the consumer free of cost. This is the subsidy. This is the type of subsidy government is given to the consumer. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now look, so BD, now you are getting BD, no cash you are receiving. You are getting BD amount of X as extra, given by government to you as free. Now look, if you are at A, initially say your consumption was A. Now given that A means what? A means you are consuming not a single unit of X. You are consuming only Y. Whatever income you have, you are spending it only for Y. But if given that point A, if you are getting subsidy in kind, that means now you can consume at the point E, because A is free of cost. Huh? So you are spending your total money for Y, so you are at A. In addition to that, AE is given to you as free of cost. So now your consumption point can be E. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So what is the new budget line to you now if it is subsidy in kind? The new budget line is AED because it is equivalent. The remaining portion is same. So you can consume that amount of Y with this amount of X, that amount of Y with this amount of X. So as the amount of X is fixed for any amount of Y, so the new budget line is now the kinked budget line. And what is the name of that budget line? AED. Okay. So we have two budget lines. Is that okay? If it is clear, then the remaining portion is that will be very much okay for you. That AED, that part is okay for you or not? If you have any query, doubt, ask.
Ma'am, can you explain once more?
Yes. Now the subsidy in kind is given. That means for any amount of consumption of Y, you are getting BD amount of X from the government as free. Okay. For any amount of consumption of Y, any amount, 0 or maximum, whatever it is, for any amount of consumption of Y, BD amount of X is given to you by the government as free. Up to this point, is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Now consider point A. Look, CD is not your budget line now. Consider point A. What is the implication of point A? You are going to spend all of your income for Y. You are not going to consume as you are not going to spend a single rupee for X. Whatever income you have, you are spending it only for Y. This is the implication of the point A. Is it okay?
Ma'am, can you repeat this implication of point A?
Yes, yes. Look, A means what? You are on the vertical line. That means you are not going, this is the budget line. Na? So you are not going to spend a single rupee for X. That is why you are on the vertical line.
Yes, ma'am.
If you are here, that means you are spending some amount of X and some amount for Y. But here, you are on the vertical axis. That means you are not going to consume a single amount of X. You are not going to spend a single rupee for X. Whatever money you have, whatever income you have, that you are going to spend only for Y. The maximum amount of Y you can consume at point A. Right? The
Yes, ma'am.
maximum amount of Y you can purchase, I should not say consume, the maximum amount of Y you can purchase at the point A. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So even if you are spending your entire income on Y, you have AE amount of X for consumption because it is free of cost to you now. Right? You are spending your entire income for Y, so you are at A. In addition to that, AE is given to you by the government. So that stretch is available to you now. That AE is available to you now. Initially, you are only at A. But now AE option is open to you because AE, that portion, which is actually the BD, this is given to you by the government as free of cost.
Yes, ma'am.
So now the budget straight after that, after point A, if you are here or if you are here, that means you are spending some amount of your income for Y and X as well. In addition to that, the same amount, that is BD or AE, that amount of X is available to you for consumption because it is free of cost. It is already given to you. So whatever be the combination of X and Y spending, that AE amount of X is always with you. Okay. So now the new budget line will be AED, because ED is equivalent to that cash subsidy, and AE, this is addition. So AED, this is the new budget line if subsidy in kind is given to the consumer. Now is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So what are the two budget line? If subsidy in cash, then the budget line is CD. If subsidy in kind, then the budget line is AED. So now the question is, which one is preferred? Subsidy in cash or subsidy in kind? Which one is better for the consumer's perspective? Okay. What is better? Consumer is thinking what? Which type of subsidy is good for him or better for him? Obviously, subsidy is always good. But which type is better for him? So let me check with the help of the indifference curve. Look at this. There are three options. Look at the first diagram. I think all these three diagrams are in Madla and Miller. So look at the first diagram. In the first diagram, look, the budget lines are very similar. Say your initial equilibrium point is here. Look at the pointer. Say your initial equilibrium was here. Your indifference curve is such that your initial equilibrium point is here. After subsidy, whatever it is, subsidy in cash or subsidy in kind, your equilibrium point is here. Look at the pointer. This is the new equilibrium point. If you compare the initial equilibrium with the new equilibrium, it is very much clear that consumer is better off because he is on the higher indifference curve, right? Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Consumer is better off. He is getting more utility. So he is better off. But which one is better? For both options, if it is subsidy in cash or it is subsidy in kind, this new equilibrium is available for the consumer. So in that case, he is indifferent. He is indifferent between the types of subsidy. Any type of subsidy is okay for him because he is getting same level of utility after subsidy in cash or subsidy in kind. So he is indifferent between the types of subsidy if this is the equilibrium. Okay. Now look at the second. In the second diagram, this is the first equilibrium and this is the final equilibrium. What is the speciality of the final equilibrium? At final equilibrium, you are getting equilibrium just at the king point. Just at the king point of the budget line on subsidy in kind. But look, that king point is also common. That king point is also common for any type of subsidy. So in that case also, the consumer is indifferent between subsidy in cash and subsidy in kind. What about the third one? His indifference curve is such that, look, it depends on the slope. You can see the slopes are changing. The indifference curve, because it is your preference pattern, right? It is your preference pattern. I cannot control it. So based on that, your indifference curve is such that the new equilibrium is on that dotted portion, that is subsidy in cash. Okay, that CD, this is a part of CD. So your equilibrium is on the new equilibrium is on the budget line, which is only available if subsidy in cash is given to you. Okay, if subsidy in kind is given to you, look, in that case, in the third diagram, if subsidy in kind is given to you, then what will be your maximum equilibrium? That may be your maximum equilibrium point. But as subsidy in cash, that option is open to you. You are moving on the higher indifference curve. So obviously, you are the consumer. Your option is to maximize. Your objective is to maximize the utility, and you can go on the higher indifference curve. There is more utility you can achieve if subsidy in cash is given to you. So only from the third case, only if your indifference curve is like the third diagram, then subsidy in cash is preferable. Other than that, the consumer is indifferent between the types of subsidy. Is it okay?
Excuse me, ma'am. In the first case,
Hmm.
the consumption of X is AE plus the OD. AE plus OD. Okay.
At AE is common. He has to have it. Okay.
Okay.
Because this is given to him, and if something free is given to you and it is a normal good, why not? You have to consume it. You are interested to consume it. You are consuming.
Okay, ma'am.
So what is the conclusion? That we are not certain about the type of subsidy. Okay, so type of preference. It depends on the preference pattern of the consumer. If consumer's preference pattern is such that the new equilibrium, that is after subsidy, the equilibrium point is only on the subsidy in cash budget line, in that case only consumer is preferring subsidy in cash. Other than that, consumer is basically indifferent between subsidy in cash and subsidy in kind. Okay, so that is the conclusion. Very well written in Madla and Miller. You can check it and you can study from there also. Hmm. Okay, so let me go to the next one. Income. I can go, or will I stop here? You have any query? Anything? Just tell me, huh? Just tell me. If you have any query, just tell me. I will explain. If you don't have query, that also you tell me so that I can proceed.
No query, ma'am.
Okay. So look at the next one. Income consumption curve. In short, we are calling it as ICC. Hmm. Income consumption curve. What it is? It is the combination of equilibrium consumption of two commodities when income level is changing only. Okay, so if you change, if you continue change your income level, you will get different equilibrium on different budget lines. So if you just join all those equilibrium points by the line, that line is called the curve. That curve is called income consumption curve. Look at this diagram. This is the income consumption curve. Hmm. Here we are measuring x and y, and if initially your income is this, income is represented by this budget line, you are having equilibrium here. With all other things constant, if your income is rising, then your budget line will shift parallelly upward. So the new budget line is here. Now, given this new budget line, you are having new equilibrium here. Similarly, you can continue this process. Again, you rise your income. Again, you increase your income. This is how you can get different equilibrium points on separate budget lines. If you join all those equilibrium points through a line, the line is like this. And this is called income consumption curve. Here we assume commodity X and commodity Y, these are normal good. Okay, why we have to assume it? Because look, here when the income is, just compare the first equilibrium with the final equilibrium. Your income is rising. And look, the consumption of X and consumption of Y both are rising. Nah? Look at this. Initially, your consumption of X is here. Now your consumption of X is increased to here. Similarly, initially your Y consumption was here and now your Y consumption is here. So both consumptions are rising. That means income is rising, consumption is rising. So which type of commodity has this property? Normal good. Okay. For the normal good, if income is rising, we are interested to increase the consumption. That is why it is written ICC is upward rising only when two commodities are normal. Is it okay? Is there any problem from this slide? Any query from this line?
No, ma'am.
Look, here, commodity Y is considered as inferior. Inferior means what? Inferior means if you increase your income, consumption of that commodity will fall. That is called inferior good. For example, cheap vegetables, cheap fish. Okay. For example, cheap, the cheap fish. So if your income is rising, you are not interested to have the cheap fish. You are going to consume some expensive fishes, say ilish or chingri, or I'm just giving some examples. So this is how you are moving from the inferior good to the normal good. So here we assume commodity Y as the inferior good. Okay, so here look what happened. Initially, consumption of Y was here, and after the equilibrium, after the increase in income, consumption of Y is falling. So here we assume Y as the inferior good, but X is the normal good. Look, X is the normal good. Consumption of X is rising because of rise in income. So X is normal, but Y is inferior. Is it okay? In that case, ICC will be downward sloping. In that case, ICC will be like this. Income consumption curve will be like this. Anything? Any doubt?
Ma'am,
No,
that
ma'am.
income line is parallel to the previous income line.
Yes, what you are talking?
The new income line is parallel to the previous income
Yeah,
line.
obviously, always. Because income is rising only, nothing changed.
Okay, ma'am, thank you.
Okay. Now, so you can understand if, okay, just tell me if X is inferior. If X is inferior, here I drawn the diagram for inferior Y, but if X is inferior, then what will be the shape of ICC? Let me dot two budget lines parallel to each other. Okay. So that is done. Here we are measuring X and here Y. Okay. Say initial equilibrium is here. And X is assumed as inferior. So the new equilibrium must be here. Look, my X consumption should fall. Look, my X consumption is falling. But Y consumption is rising. Y consumption is rising. Look, Y consumption. So Y is the normal good, but X is inferior. So in that case, the ICC will be like this. Okay, so this is my ICC. Done. Clear? This is how some application type of question you may face. So here you have to remember one thing. This is a common mistake by the student. That is why I am saying, look, I have drawn two indifference curves. Maybe the y consumption is falling. Here also y x consumption is falling. Whatever be the situation, as this is for single individual, as this is for single consumer, one consumer is here. The whatever but indifference curve you will draw, indifference curves should be parallel to each other. Remember, indifference curves should be parallel to each other. Very, very careful about that. Okay. Indifference curves should be parallel to each other. If don't draw this type of diagram, look. Yeah. Don't draw this type of indifference curves. And you are saying, look, ma'am, here these are okay, just assume these are parallel. But what if you will get such type of teacher? Na? He or she can just raise it and it will intersect in this way and you will get a big zero. Okay, so it's better not to draw indifference curve who are not parallel to each other. You can draw if you are considering more than one consumer. But as it is for the single consumer, don't draw indifference curves which are not parallel to each other. Okay, they should be parallel to each other always. Maybe quite flat, maybe quite steep, whatever it is, but they should be parallel to each other. Is it okay? This is a common mistake students are doing. That is why I am telling. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Acha. So this is the case of inferior y. Now this is another curve called price consumption curve. Price consumption curve is actually the combination of equilibrium consumption of two commodities so that price of one commodity is changing. That means relative price is changing. Simple. Price of one commodity is changing or relative price is changing. Relative price means Px by Py. If Px is changing or Py is changing or both are changing, Px by Py will definitely change. So you can say it is the equilibrium. Look, up to this point, it is similar to ICC. Combination of equilibrium consumption of two commodities. It is similar. But then after, why the equilibrium points are changing? Because price of one commodity is changing. Okay, so this is the BCC. How it looks? Look, this is the BCC. Here we are assuming X and Y as before. Initial equilibrium is here. Now your income is constant. Price of Y is constant. Price of X, bolo to ki hoyeche? In that case, price of X is rising or falling so that you are moving to that equilibrium.
Falling, ma'am.
Yes, price of X is falling. Very good. So price of X is falling. That is why the budget line is becoming flatter with the constant vertical intercept. You have new equilibrium point. And you can continue this process. Again, you reduce the price of X. You can get this thing and you will get another equilibrium. If you join all those equilibrium points, you will get a curve called price consumption curve, PCC. Okay. Now there are, depending on the nature of the commodity, depending on the elasticity of demand of the commodity, we are getting different type of PCC that we will see. But before that, if you have any query from this particular diagram, you are free to ask. Now, is there any problem with this diagram?
Ma'am,
Yes.
when we have both the normal goods, then the optimum points or the equilibrium points will always lie on the same line. Will they be always coincident?
Tell again.
When we have both the normal goods,
Hmm.
then will
Yes.
the optimum points or the equilibrium points will lie on the same line?
Yes, possible. Possible. That we will see. Different options are there. Different options are there, and we will show you.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, so any other no question, no? Chalo. Look, this is another PCC. Look, as you are asking. Look, there is no change of Y consumption. Only X consumption is rising. Hmm? So actually, Y is consumption of Y is not related with the price of X. Okay, whatever be the price of X, Y consumption is indifferent. It is constant. It is independent of the price of X. This is another option. Consumption of X is rising because price of X is falling. Consumption of Y is falling. And this is the third option. Look, this is quite extreme case. Price of X is falling. Consumption of X is falling as well. So this is actually the violation of law of demand. Na? Price of X is falling. The demand of X is falling. So this is the violation of law of demand. Why we are getting this type of PCC, that we will explain. Why we are getting different type of PCC like this, we are going to explain those. This is another. No change of X consumption. Price of X is falling, but consumption of X is indifferent. Whereas consumption of Y is rising. That is also possible. To explain the reason behind that, why we are getting so many type of PCCs, upward rising, downward sloping, parallel to horizontal, parallel to vertical, these, that. So why these are so? To find out the reason behind those, to explain it logically, we need little bit mathematics. Look, what is the name of the first equation? Can you tell me what is the name of the first equation?
Excuse me, ma'am, your voice is fading away.
Better now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, fine. Now, can you tell me what is the name of the first equation? Why we are writing this equation? The first
To,
equation.
to get the budget line.
Budget line. Exactly. This is the equation of the budget line. Right. This is the equation of the budget line. M bar. That means my income level is constant. Along the budget line, my income is constant. So from that equation, we can write like P1 X1, the second one, right? P1 X1 is equal to M minus P2 X2. Done. Now from there, okay, that mathematics is not clear. Acha, acha. From here I can explain. Look at the first diagram. Yes, this is the first diagram. Try to remember this diagram as it is not possible to do both things simultaneously. Try to remember this diagram. Here price of X is falling and the demand of Y is also rising. Okay. From this equation, I can do it. Look, here price of X is falling, like X1, say two commodities are X1 and X2. So price of X1 is falling, that is P1 is falling. Do you get that point? P1 is falling. From that diagram, P1 is falling. Is it clear to you? If you can remember, আমি আবার না ডায়াগ্রামটা আঁকি নইলে আর হবে না। এই দেখো। That is our first diagram. Can you remember? This is our first diagram. Can you remember this diagram? This is the PCC. Can you remember? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Now look at this diagram and try to relate it with this equation. In this equation, the price P1 is falling. Here we are measuring commodity 1 and here we are measuring commodity 2. X1 and X2. So P1 is falling. Do you agree with me? P1 is falling?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now P1 is falling from the diagram, X1 is rising, right? Right? From the diagram, look. X1 is rising though.
Yes, ma'am.
So P1 is falling, X1 is rising. So actually in my left hand side, two things are working to the opposite direction. Okay, one is falling, another is rising. Now look at the right hand side. In the right hand side, my income level, it is constant because I am on the budget line. Income is constant. P2 is also constant. Right? P2 is also constant. What about X2? In the diagram, X2 is rising or falling? Tell me.
Rising, ma'am.
Rising. So X2 is rising. So P2 into X2, that is rising. So M minus P2 X2, is it falling or rising?
Falling, ma'am.
Ma'am, X2 is not rising.
X2 is rising.
Hmm.
এই দেখো দাঁড়াও যেমন আমার ডায়াগ্রাম
Oh, ma'am, I understood. Yes, ma'am.
X2 is rising. X2 is rising. So P2 into X2 is rising. So tell me M minus P2 X2, rising or falling?
Falling.
Falling. Good. Then P1 X1 must fall because equality is there. Now out of this P1 X1, P1 is falling and X1 is rising. Right? The product should fall because my right hand side is falling. So left hand side should fall. Now out of this left hand side, P1 is falling and X1 is rising, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now out of these two, P1 and X1, one is falling, another is rising, but the product is falling. So we can say the falling effect is stronger than increasing effect. That is why the product is falling. Right? Falling effect is stronger than increasing effect. Look, P1 is falling, X1 is rising, but the product is falling. Product is falling clearly. So I can say that falling effect, whoever is falling, the falling effect is stronger than the increasing effect. And that is why the ultimate product is falling.
Yes, ma'am.
So the change of price is greater than change of X. Change of P1 is greater than change of X1 because X1 was rising and P1 was falling. As we conclude that falling effect is stronger, so I can say that change of P1 is greater than change of X1. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Now look, what is your elasticity? Elasticity is the numerator is the change of X and the denominator is change of price. Now I said that change of price, change of P1 is greater than change of X1. That means my denominator is greater than numerator. Right? Yeah, my numerator is lesser than the denominator. My denominator is more than the numerator. So the elasticity of demand for X1 is less than 1. Is it okay? Elasticity of demand for X1 is less than 1. Think of it and then tell me. No issue. I'm not in a hurry. Think of it and then tell. You think? I'm just writing the formula. I say, up to this point, is it okay to all that P1 X1 should fall? X2 is rising, P2 X2 is rising, M minus P2 X2 is falling. So P1 X1 should fall. Up to this point, is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Hmm. So now I'm concentrating on P1 X1. So the conclusion is there. The end result is there that P1 X1 is falling. Now out of this P1 X1, P1 is falling and X1 is rising from the diagram, right? P1 is falling and X1 is rising, but the product is falling. So I can say that falling effect is stronger than increasing effect. Then
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what is the falling effect? Falling effect means which one is falling? Price. So I can say the change of price is greater than change of X. Change of price, change of P1 is greater than change of X1. So change of X1 is my numerator and change of P1 is my denominator for the elasticity. And change of X1 is less than change of P1. That means the numerator is lesser than the denominator. That means this ratio is less than 1. Is it okay? Bebe bolo. Take your time.
Yes, ma'am. It's okay.
So what is the conclusion? That PCC will be upward rising if elasticity of demand for X1 is less than 1. Or if X1 is inelastic, if X1 has inelastic demand, then the PCC will be upward rising. If X1 is inelastic in demand, then PCC will be upward rising. Clear? This is my conclusion. If X1 is inelastic in demand, then PCC is upward rising. That is the reason behind the upward rising PCC. Is it okay?
M minus P2X2 basically total revenue.
না না রেভিনিউ আবার কি? তুমি তো কনজিউমার, তোমার আবার রেভিনিউ কোথায়?
No, I mean I'm talking on the point of view of revenue, like you have been taught in elasticity. If the price increase, if the price of a commodity increases, the revenue will also increase.
No,
And
this
that,
is
and
from
that
the supply side. No. This is from the supply side. Here it is
কনফিউশন হচ্ছে এটা এখনো কনফিউজ হচ্ছে এই হচ্ছে কথা
ক্লিয়ার হচ্ছে না?
না ম্যাম এটা ক্লিয়ার হচ্ছে না এখনো
আচ্ছা কোন জায়গাটায় ঠিক আটকে যাচ্ছে বলো, সেখান থেকে আবার শুরু করি।
ম্যাম এই ইকুয়েশনটাই ম্যাম P1 X1 is equals to M মানে কি করে বুঝবো যে কোনটার এফেক্ট বেশি স্ট্রং মানে কোয়ান্টিটি
হ্যাঁ,
কোয়ান্টিটা
look
বেশি
at
স্ট্রং না প্রাইসটা
okay fine. Look at the diagram. Look at the diagram. As PCC is upward rising, X2 is rising. এটা বোঝা যাচ্ছে? As PCC is upward rising, due to fall in P1, X2 is rising. এটা তো বোঝা যাচ্ছে। Is it clear? Then X2 is rising. But look, I assume that all other things are constant. Only price of X1 is falling. That means the income is constant, P2 is constant, and from the diagram X2 is rising. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what about P2 and X2? If X2 is rising, so P2 into X2, that should rise. Because P2 is constant.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. P2 X will rise.
Constant, X2 is rising. So P2 into X2 is rising. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Now M minus P2 X2, it should fall now. Because M is
Yes, ma'am.
constant. M is constant. Your P2 X2 is rising. So M minus P2 X2, that should fall. Clear? M is constant, P2 is constant, X2 is rising. So P2 X2 is rising, M minus P2 X2 is falling. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now if this is what? This is the right hand side. So if right hand side is falling, then my left hand side should fall because there is an equality. So left hand side should fall. Clear?
Ah, ma'am.
Now in the left hand side, there are two variables because I assume P1 should fall. Okay, and X1 is falling. Now these two variables, that is P1 and X1, they are going to the opposite direction. P1 is falling and X1 is rising. And the product is falling. So many things are happening in the left hand side. The product is falling. Product of whom? Product of P1 and X1. I assume P1 is falling. And because of that, from the diagram, X1 is rising. Dekho? Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So the product is falling. P1 is falling. X1 is rising. Up to this point, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So if the product is falling, but within that two factors are going to the opposite direction, one is rising, one is falling. So I should say ultimately the falling effect must be stronger than the rising effect. And that is why the product is falling.
Ah, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Now look at the elasticity part. Now look at the elasticity part. Okay, look at this. I'm coming back. I'm coming back by 2 minutes. Just give me 1 minute. I'm just coming. 1 minute. 1 minute. Is it okay? Have you check it? Have you checked it? Is it done?
Ma'am,
Yes.
you were mute all the time.
All the time means? Right now?
Mm, yes, ma'am.
Muted. No? I'm not muted now. Am I audible?
Ma'am, now you're audible.
Yes, but last 2 minutes I was muted. That I know.
Okay, ma'am.
But before that I was audible, na?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Because I just took 2 minutes break. Acha, now tell me, is it okay? Have you understand that why?
Yes.
What is the
Yes,
relation
ma'am.
between the elasticity? Yes. What is the relation between the elasticity and the slope or the position of the PCC? Okay. If it is okay, then I'm giving you one task. Write these two lines, that first and second line. First and second line, like this is the budget line, and from there, P1x1 is equal to M minus P2x2. Just write these two lines in your copy. And then come here. The first diagram I explained. The first diagram I explained to you how elasticity, that means if X1 is inelastic in demand, then PCC is upward rising. Okay, that is my conclusion. Draw this
Ma'am,
diagram. Yes.
can you once show those two lines?
Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Now come, I'm going there. The first diagram I explained. Draw the second diagram. Here the PCC is parallel to the horizontal axis. That means there is no change in X2. Draw this diagram. Draw these two diagrams. Actually, there are 5 diagrams. So the first one I have shown. These are the two, third and fourth. In the third diagram, PCC is downward sloping. In the fourth diagram, PCC is backward bending.
Excuse me, ma'am. Can you show the second diagram once again?
Yes. Oh, just a minute. Can I go there? Go there. I couldn't find the cursor, the pointer, nothing is here. কি হলো রে বাবা? দাঁড়াও। Yes. Just a minute, wait করো। আমার কম্পিউটারে কিছু প্রবলেম হচ্ছে। 1 minute. 1 minute, just a minute. Yeah. Is it clear? This is the second diagram. PCC is parallel to the horizontal axis. Is it done for all?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
This is the third and the fourth diagram. In the third diagram, PCC is downward sloping. In the fourth diagram, PCC is backward bending. In the third diagram, X2 is falling. In the fourth diagram, X1 is falling. And in the last diagram, PCC is parallel to the vertical axis. That means no change of x1. Okay, so these are the 5 diagrams. This is the first diagram. This is the first diagram. That was the first diagram I explained. This is the second. This is the third and fourth. And this is the 5th diagram. Okay. So draw all 4 diagrams. With the help of these two equations, try to find out what is the relation of elasticity and the shape of PCC. Okay. That is your home task. I have done 1 and the remaining 4, this is your task. Is it done? Any query from your home task? Yes. Bolo?
Ma'am, can you show the 4th diagram once again? Yes, ma'am.
Any other query?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Ma'am, our task is to find E1.
No, I asked to find you to I asked you to find out the relation between the elasticity of demand for X1 and the corresponding slope of PCC. That if PCC is downward sloping, then what is the elasticity of demand for X1? Do you get the point? If PCC
Okay,
is
ma'am.
backward bending,
Yes,
then what
ma'am.
is the elasticity of demand for X1? Is
Ma'am, I find it out, ma'am. I find it out.
okay. You please explain it in the next class, because
Okay.
let all other students do their task. All of you solve it, and in the next class we will discuss it. Okay. Now look, here we are going to discuss another thing. That is the Hickshian substitution effect and the Slasky substitution effect. Any query?
हेलो
Hello.
अच्छा उसे कलसी बाड़ी के पास ना चाहिए आप
चलो 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 नीचे
चल।
चलो आइए।
3 जन हो ना, 3 तो है, लेके जाओ।
अंदर आइए आप नीचे आपको देखना गाड़ी का नंबर बता दीजिएगा
Harsh, Harsh, please switch off your mic. Oof, so many sounds. একে তো সিলেবাস শেষ হচ্ছে না, তার মধ্যে এই অবস্থা। Okay. So look at this. Hickshian substitution effect and Slasky substitution effect. This is the last thing we are going to discuss here. Hickshian substitution effect and Slasky substitution effect. Look, Hicks is the name of an economist. Slasky is name of another economist. So they are trying to explain substitution effect, that how you are going to substitute one commodity for another if relative price is changing. Okay, this is what they are trying to do. Their approaches are different. Look, in the first diagram, the first one is the Hickshian substitution effect and the second one is the Slasky substitution effect. You have to understand it clearly. You have to understand. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay. So you have to understand it clearly because we are going to apply it after this slide. In the next three or four slides, we are going to apply this concept. That is why it is important. Try to understand it. Look what happened. Initially, your budget line is the steeper budget line. Initially, your budget line is that steeper budget line. So you have new equilibrium with your indifference curve here. After some time, there is a change in the relative price. Maybe price of X is falling, maybe price of Y is rising, whatever it is, there is a change in the relative price. Now, why I am talking about the relative price repeatedly? Because the slope of the budget line is minus of Px by Py, that is the relative price. So if relative price is changing, that means slope is changing, right? Slope of the budget line is changing. Say the relative price is changing so that your budget line is becoming flatter. And the new budget line is the flatter budget line. This is the new budget line. Okay. And this budget line is tangent with your indifference curve at some other point. Okay. So look, you are moving from here to here. You are moving on the same, first of all, you are on the same indifference curve. In case of Hessian substitution effect, we must be on the same indifference curve. In case of Hessian substitution effect, we must be on the same indifference curve. Now here, we are moving from here to here. Why? Because the relative price is changing. And how it is changing? Look, if you compare the slope of the budget lines, you can see price of X is lesser than before and price of Y is higher than before, right? Because vertical axis is falling and the horizontal intercept is rising. So now commodity X is cheaper as compared to the initial one. And as commodity X is cheaper, so consumers are substituting Y by X. Consumers are preferring more X, less Y. And this is what they have done. Okay. He is moving from here to here. He is substituting Y by X. That means he is consuming more X and less Y. But his total utility is constant. Okay. So substitution is there because of the change in relative price and logical substitution definitely. But, there is a but, your indifference curve must be same. That means your total utility must be same. So Hessian substitution effect is clear to you. The first diagram, is it clear to you? The first diagram, is it clear? The movement from this equilibrium point to this equilibrium point is called the Hessian substitution effect. You are substituting one commodity by another because the relative price is changing, but you are on the same indifference curve. That means your total utility must be constant. Given the total utility, you are substituting one commodity by another because the relative price is changing. Now, is it okay? Yes.
Here we are considering the income to be fixed.
Income to be fixed, yes.
So, ma'am, if the income is fixed, then why will I go to other point commodity bundle if the utility is also fixed? Why will we substitute?
Because the relative price is changing. Now, relatively, X is becoming cheaper.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Now look at the Slasky. Slasky is also giving the similar type of idea, but there is a difference. What is the difference? Okay, look at this. Initially, your budget line is this flatter one. Initially, your budget line is this flatter one. Look at my pointer, you can understand. This is the budget line. And given this budget line, you have one indifference curve, one equilibrium, it is here. Okay, so that equilibrium point is here. Now the relative price is changing. You have to draw your budget line such that that new budget line is going through that initial equilibrium point. Your new budget line, look, your new budget line is going through the initial equilibrium point. Okay, it is a steeper one, so you can understand now x is becoming dearer and y is becoming cheaper. But it is going through the initial equilibrium point. That means with the new budget line, you can purchase your initial consumption bundle. Given the new budget line, you can purchase your initial consumption bundle. Whether you will purchase, that is different. But you can purchase. The option is open. You can purchase. Okay. But obviously that should not be your equilibrium. Given the new budget line, your equilibrium is here. And you are on the higher indifference curve. Okay. You are on the higher indifference curve. So here, like Higgsian substitution effect, your indifference curve is not same. You can move on the higher indifference curve, but your purchasing power should be same. Okay. So given the purchasing power, if you are going to substitute one commodity by another because of the change in relative price, this is called Slasky substitution effect. Given the purchasing power, because for both the budget line, you can purchase that initial equilibrium commodity combination. So given the purchasing power, that means your purchasing power is same, but you are changing your equilibrium, you are substituting one by another because of the change in relative price. This is called Slasky substitution effect. Is it okay? Is it okay? Take your time, no issue. Is it okay? Slasky is little bit difficult as compared to Higgs, but interesting. Your purchasing power should be same. That means with the new budget line, you can purchase your initial equilibrium consumption. You can purchase. Definitely, you are not going to purchase it. Your equilibrium bundle is something different, but you can purchase initial bundle. Okay. So in case of Higgs, total utility is constant. In case of Slasky, purchasing power is constant. That is the only difference between the Higgs and Slasky. Another difference is, in case of Higgs, a single indifference curve is working, and in case of Slasky, two different indifference curves are there. You can move on the higher indifference curve through Slasky. But in case of Higgs, it is not possible. Look at this diagram, think of it, no issue. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am, it's okay.
Okay, this is the decomposition part. Now tell me whether I will start it today or in the next class. What do you think? Whatever you will tell me, I will do. Will I start the decomposition? There will be 3 such diagrams. Huh? One for the normal, another for the inferior, another for the given. So if you tell me that, okay, man, start with this new diagram, I will. And if you tell me, no, ma'am, in the next class, then in the next class. It is your choice now. কি বলবে? What is your choice? What? No sound is coming. You are so confused. Yes, no, কিছু তো বলো.
Next class, ma'am.
Okay, then in the next class. Okay, so in that case, let me repeat it because that is the last class, I think. If that will be over, then yes, this is the last. Only 4 slides are there. So I can finish it. Okay, let me discuss this thing at least. একটা বলে দিই, বাকিগুলো পরের দিন বলবো। ঠিক আছে, because it's around, okay, এখনো তো 11টাই বাজেনি। Fine. So it's not 11 o'clock yet. So it's better to start at least one diagram today for next 10 minutes. And then the remaining portions we will discuss in the next class because that will be the next year. So look, what happened? Because you have to understand. And if possible, please draw the diagram in your copy as well. Look, the initial budget line is AB. Okay? And the initial equilibrium is E1. Is it clear to all? The diagram is okay. Is it visible properly to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So budget line is AB and the initial equilibrium is E1. Now given that E1, the consumer is consuming Q1. Done. Now all other things are constant. Consumers, the price of X1 or price of X, whatever you say, is falling. Okay, so the new budget line is AC and the new equilibrium is E2. Up to this point, is it okay? The initial equilibrium is E1, new equilibrium is E2. Up to this point, is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So the movement from E1 to E2 is called price effect. Because why? Because it is because of the change in price of X. Okay, it is a change because of the change in relative price. So this is called price effect. Now you can decompose this price effect into income and substitution effect. You know what is income effect and you know what is substitution effect, right? From here, you know what is substitution effect. So here we are going to follow Hicksian substitution effect. Slasky is also possible. We will do, but let me start with the Hicksian substitution effect. How to do that? I have drawn another budget line which is parallel to the new budget line AC, like MN. Okay, the MN is parallel to SE. And MN is tangent with the initial indifference curve at E3. Okay, MN is tangent to the initial indifference curve at E3. Is it okay? So I have taken some money from the consumer so that I can draw. It's just like fall in income. So the new budget line is MN such that it is tangent with the initial indifference curve at E3. Is it okay? Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Now look, there are three equilibrium points, E1, E2, E3. The movement from E1 to E3, forget about E2. Forget about it. Say there is no E2. Just look at E1 and E2. Just concentrate on E1 and E3. E1 and E3. Can you tell me what it is? What is the name of the movement from E1 to E3? Movement from E1 to E3. I just said it. The movement from E1 to Hicksian substitution effect. Okay, this is Hicksian substitution effect. Now, what the substitution effect is telling us that the price, the relative price of X is falling, so you should consume more of X, right? So the consumer is consuming. Look, initially the consumer was consuming Q1 and now the consumer is consuming Q3. So he is consuming more. So substitution effect is telling that you should consume more of X because price of X is relatively lesser than before. Okay, done. Now forget about E1. Say there is no E1. Just compare E3 and E2. E3 and E2. These two equilibrium points are on two parallel budget lines. E3 is on MN and E2 is on AC. MN and AC, they are parallel to each other. So can you tell me what is the name of the movement from E3 to E2? Movement from E3 to E2. E3 to E2.
That terms Latke substitution of.
No, income effect. Someone said income effect. It is income effect. Because it is, look, two budget lines are parallel. So it is just like your income has increased, income has changed, nothing else. So movement from E3 to E2 is called income effect. And what income effect is saying? That as your income is rising, you should consume more of X because X is assumed as the normal good. Okay. As X is normal good, you should consume more of X because your income has increased. So the substitution effect is telling the consumer to consume more of X because price of X is falling. Income effect is telling the consumer to increase more of X because income, as if income is increased because of the fall in price, as if income is increased. So both effects are asking the consumer to increase consumption of X. And that is why ultimately consumption of X has increased from Q1 to Q2. Okay, so look, the movement from, it is written over here, movement E1, E2, that is the price effect, E1, E2. That I can write it as E1, E3 plus E3, E2. E1, E2, E1, E2, that I can write as this, just step by step. E1, E3 plus E3, E2. So this is price effect. Just a minute. E1, E3 is what? Substitution effect. And E3, E2 is what? Income effect. Okay, so look, price effect is equal to substitution effect plus income effect. Is it okay? So this is how you can decompose price effect into income and substitution effect. Is it okay? For normal
Yes,
good.
ma'am.
For normal good. And I will stop here because it's a heavy thing I'm doing. After that, in next year, we will discuss about the inferior good and the given good and the derivation of the demand curve. Only 3 or 4, I think 1, 2, 3. 3 slides remain. Yeah. So we are in a good position now. Okay.
আচ্ছা ম্যাম হ্যালো ম্যাম
হ্যাঁ,
আইসিসি
বলো।
পিসিসি এইগুলো ম্যাম রেফারেন্স
এগুলো কি করব?
ম্যাম রেফারেন্স বুক ম্যাম আইসিসি পিসিসি
হ্যাঁ, রেফারেন্স তো আছে, তুমি পিনডায়েট পড়ো না। যদি তোমার কাছে ফার্গুসন গোল্ড থাকে তুমি সেটাও পড়ো। তুমি পিনডায়েট
কোন
পড়ো।
বইটা ম্যাম?
Ferguson and Gold. This is another textbook, microeconomics, written in your syllabus. Ferguson and Gold.
ওকে ম্যাম
That
ওকে
is,
ম্যাম
if you are not getting it, then go with Pindyck and Rubenfeld. These are there.
ওকে ম্যাম
Any standard textbook, you have all those things. Okay. So I think I should stop here for today. In the next class, we will discuss the remaining 3 and then the question, because the question answer discussion is very important for the perfect competition. Because in case of consumer behavior, because application oriented questions are coming. Generally, application oriented questions are coming from this chapter. So it's better to discuss university questions in details there. So I think we will have some time after in the January. So there we will discuss all those things. Okay.